Good morning. I call to order the regular board meeting of the Director of the Butte Irrigation District for Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. Mr. Essinger, would you please give the communication?
Father, I thank you for this new day. I thank you for the rains that have come, and may they continue through this monsoon season. I ask, Father, that you be with this board of directors today and that they make wise decisions and they are made according to your will. Thank you for all the EBID staff and employees who dedicated to ensure a successful irrigation season and deliver of the 6-inch allotment that was given to the farmers this year. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Director Sloan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, all. Thank you to our guests for attending. We'll start with introductions, and I'll start with our friends from the IBWC.
Good morning, everyone. Samantha Stifler from the IBWC. Sarah McCartney, IBWC. Lisa Beth, or NP, Ariano from IBWC. Valeria Pitero, IBWC.
Good morning, Larry Vasquez, Reclamation of Passive Office. Leadership, Water. Austin, Tharp, Cultivate Construction. Alpha Pro, Office of the State.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, would you please announce the guests that are present online?
Yes, present online, we have Karen Byram, we have Phil King, we have AJ Carlson, we have Anthony Collin, Delise Maciel, we have DL Sanders, we have James Narvaez, we have JR Hennessy, we have Leah Diaz, and we have Scott Gamboa.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. I welcome you all to our meeting. We have recognition of service. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we are recognizing Chris Holguin. He's our maintenance foreman here in the Central region. Chris is not here. Chris has been with the district for 30 years as of this month. And Marty Lucero, we're also recognizing she's been with the district for 10 years. She's our customer service rep that you all meet at the front desk every time you come in the door. So we'd like to thank both of them for their many years of service.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and I second what Mr. Smith has said in thanking them for their years of service. The district is built on the experience of the people that work here. The district is its people. And so I am grateful for the amount of their lives they dedicate to service of our. I would like to thank Marty and Chris very much, and we have a poem and a certificate memorializing their years of service. Brings us to the approval of board minutes. I'm sorry, prior to that, I would like to make a change in the order of the agenda. So without objection, I would like to move item 12, water update, to immediately following the approval of board minutes. Dr. King has another engagement that he needs to get to, and I'd like for him to be able to present and is there any objection to the change in agenda to move item 12 to immediately after item 5? Hearing no objection, the agenda is so amended. Approval of board minutes. You have in your packet the minutes for the regularly scheduled board meeting of June 25th, 2025. Are there changes or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, do we need to hold a moment while we address something with
The cameras are not working.
Oh,
Would you like me to pause?
Dr. King, if you're online, can you hear?
Sure can.
Thank you. We will getting the camera operating.
We can hear it and see the cameras.
You can
You
see
can
us?
see us?
Yes, I can.
All right, we can't see ourselves, but everyone else can see us. That's good.
I guess if that's,
Moving back to the minutes. Hearing no changes or additions. I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes for June 25th, 2025.
Motion so made. Second.
I have a motion from Director Colquitt, seconded by Director Clay-Schultz to approve the minutes of June 25th, 2025. Any further discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opinion of the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. The minutes for June 25th, 2025 are approved. That brings us to the water update. Dr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your shuffling things around. Are you seeing my screen okay?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I will be brief. I think the next board meeting will have a lot more data for you on how the season went, because it all, for EBID at least, it came to an end yesterday, but of course, El Paso #1 and Mexico are still running water. This is what what our water supply for the season looked like as of close of July 7th, so the midnight before last. We had 112,000 acre feet in Elephant Butte, 28,000 or so in Caballo. I have done a bit of shuffling around with some of the numbers here. The compact credit water stays the same. The San Juan Chama water is an estimate. So you see we have 120, call it 129,000 of usable project storage. Not releasable is 13,000. And what I am doing in this calculation, and this is just me at this point, but I have moved the dead pool that we reserved for Caballo of 12,000 acre feet. I've cut that to 4,500 actually, because due to the plug, which I'll talk about in a bit here, we are anticipating a drawdown to essentially dead storage in Caballo so that we can get in and clean out the outlet works. We've released about 180,000 as of the end of July 7th, which means a seasonal supply of 295,000. Now, the first and only allocation we did, we allocated to a release of about 267,000. So it might look like we picked up nearly 30,000 acre feet, but remember, 7,500 of that came from moving from unreleasable in Caballo to releasable. So we really haven't had significant runoff. We haven't had basically any runoff since we did the allocation. This is what the river is looking like upstream as of yesterday. Obviously, the whole river is running well below the median. The median is the yellow line you see. The current daily flow is the blue line. So up here at Otoe Gauge, you see we're well below. And notice this just in the last few days, this sort of a plummet that we're seeing. If we come down to the Albuquerque gauge, that plummet is even more pronounced. I looked at it this morning and it was running at 64 CFS at Albuquerque. It is very much anticipated that we'll have drying of the river up into the Albuquerque reach. Down at San Marcial, you see it's been dry really since April, with the occasional little arroyo flow going here, but it's back to zero now. So there's essentially no flow coming down the river right now. That, that 200 acre feet per day of inflow, that's almost negligible. And basically what that would consist of is water coming out of bank storage as the reservoir level drops. So the river looks pretty bad and getting worse. Our precipitation, and this is, focusing very much on the headwaters. I probably need to get in here and start looking at what our monsoon is doing, although the monsoon doesn't matter nearly as much as the precipitation in our headwaters. You see we're running about 3/4 of average, and that has been pretty consistent for the last several months. So we are running below normal or below average, however you want to express that, consistently throughout the season, both the snow season and now that we're into the monsoon season. Looking out, this is a few weeks old, but it's the latest one they have for the August, September, October outlook. And what happens is we remain in equal chances. So there's still no particular indication that the rest of our monsoon season will be better than normal or worse than normal. There is a pretty strong signal that again persists for months now that will be above average. Excuse me, I should do this from my keyboard. Our drought monitor really hasn't changed much for the Rio Grande. Most of pretty much all of the Rio Grande Basin is in some level from moderate drought. Well, I guess up to extreme. We haven't gotten into exceptional, but I expect we will before the season is out. But that's just me being pessimistic. Our seasonal drought outlook improved. This area in the lower part of the Rio Grande watershed, the forecast has gone from drought persists to drought remains but improves. I'm not quite sure what the indication that would happen is. The only thing I can say is that there has been this persistent tropical disturbance, I guess it's classified as, sitting down off the coast of Mexico, like really from Acapulco down to maybe Costa Rica. It's been sitting there for weeks now, and it is generating a lot of moisture. The moisture we are getting, I believe, is coming mostly from that. It picks up off the Pacific coast there. The flows over the Sierra Madres, and hopefully they'll get some good precipitation out of the Sierra Madres to help with their treaty compliance downstream on the lower part of the Rio Grande. But if you want any ray of sunshine, that's about it for this year, is that it may improve a bit. Getting to the plug, back on or about the 25th and 26th of June, we had some heavy storms out in the Black Range that generated a pretty big flow coming out of the Black Range, particularly down Percha Creek is the one that we were looking at. These photos, I believe, are from James Narvaez, who was on the spot up there when Percha was flowing. And this is after it's come down a bit. But you can see this heavy woody debris on the overbanks here, and of course it's in the main channel as well. That all runs into Caballo right above the outlet, and the flow in the reservoir is quite slow. Caballo, as far as sediment is concerned, acts as sort of the settling basin, but this is not as dense as sediment. It obviously floats, so it's lighter than water, but as it saturates, it will go to neutral buoyancy where it doesn't really float or sink. And then if it continues to saturate, it will get slight negative buoyancy. That is, it will actually sink, but not like sediment where, the heavy sediment will follow the bed. This is throughout the water column when it gets in there and has a chance to saturate. So what happened is this is the outlet works for Caballo Reservoir. This is the top of it. There's a big sort of a circular cage down here below it, circular or square. I guess it's square, but a big cage around this that is the main outlet. This is where the gates go up. And so we're looking above the top of the actual outlet structure here, but you can see all that muck is centered right on the outlet, because that's where the pull is from the release. Whoops. Reclamation did get in there, and I got a hats off to the El Paso field office. Had a call with Ben Kelmanson up there Sunday, the 29th or so, saying, Houston, we have a problem, and they got right on it. They went in and were skimming off the surface, which is kind of a delicate operation, because as this debris closes in on the outlet, if you disturb it, it presents the threat of just tightening down on you, because it's so fluid in there. But they went in and skimmed a large volume. I don't remember what their final take was on this, but you can kind of see the nature of it. It's a wide assortment of sticks. So these bigger, what I would call them logs, stick up against the structure. Then the smaller sticks stick up against the bigger sticks, and the smaller sticks, it basically forms an inverted filter, which plugs up the outlet works. And it was interesting to watch this happen. But again, kudos to the El Paso, to the Elephant Butte office there. They really did get after it with no time to waste. What I've got here is I'm showing you that the points I have up here are I guess they are blue diamonds, are actual meter notes. Most of these are done by, the vast majority of these are done by Albert Barunda, who is sort of the gold standard for metering. And you see that before things got nasty, the orange dots you see are what the calculated flow would be from the gates. We have rated the gates at Caballo so that based on the opening of the gates and the level of water in Caballo Reservoir, we can very accurately estimate the flow through the gates if the gates are controlling the flow. So what happened is we were bang on, bang on, bang on, bang on. But then here on the 28th, notice that the gates said we were getting more release than what Albert's meter note was saying. And the meter note is right. There's no question about that. What was happening is that clogging was making it so less water could get out than what the gates were set at. Basically there's a new control on the flow, which is that debris field. And the line you see down here is the difference between that rating equation and the gate rating. The gate rating and the meter note. And you see the meter notes, the difference between the meter note and the gate rating. We drifted off here on the 28th substantially. We were, so I recall, about 130 off. It went downhill. We got on it. Reclamation worked on it for a few days here. At one point, the debris field was retarding the flow by about 500 CFS. We did a couple of things. Obviously, the reclamation cleanup action was a big help. But we also noted that these deviations occurred when we were increasing the flow. That is, when we were opening the gates, you get more flow, which pulls more debris in, which clogs the gate worse. So what we did is we got with EP1, we made sure that we didn't do any more gate increases, and we haven't done any more gate increases since the 28th. we've just been working with what we've got. So it took a lot of coordination between the two districts to get that done. Again, kudos to our operations people in both districts. We did have a period of recovery, and I think this is due to the debris removal and to the operation restriction on increasing the gates. We're still running, I forget what we are here, but we're about 200 and maybe 213 or something CFS off the gate rating equation. We have, I think, figured out reasonably well how to hit the gate opening to match what we actually want coming out. But it evolves with time. In other words, we can, if the gates don't move and the reservoir level is constant, we don't get constant outflow because that debris field is changing. What this means is, shades of 2016, a similar thing happened. And the way that this ends is we run Caballo down into the ground, down to dead storage, to expose the outlet works. And this would be an operation coordinated by the Elephant Butte team. And we get in there with a big clamshell bucket and dredge out that material, haul it off so it doesn't wash back in, clean it all up, and have a clean outlet to start with next year. So that's what's happening with our drain plug. In summary then, these, by the way, are a bunch of tourists on Elephant Butte Dam. This was the special master and the mediators visit with all their posse. We've only had about 10,000 acre feet of inflow since last month. We are shut down for the season as of yesterday. I think James will go into more detail on that. It all went very well. You know, sometimes you do your best work in crisis mode. And I think between EBID, El Paso #1 and the Elephant Butte field office, we handled the plug issue as well as it could be handled under the circumstances. El Paso #1 in Mexico will run into August, and that's when the Caballo release will end. And that debris plug may wind up with more water in Elephant Butte Reservoir than I had been previously forecasting. And the reason is twofold. For one thing, we're not going to leave 12,000 in Caballo. The water that would have been left in Caballo will instead be left in Elephant Butte. And we probably couldn't release as much as we wanted to during that period when we were operating on only either leaving it constant or cutting the gates. So there'll be a little more water in Elephant Butte. It's still going to go, you know, certainly below 100,000, probably well below 100,000. We'll see as Mexico and EP1's end game takes place. The one thing that I would, you know, I've been stressing for a few months now is that next year's water supply, we're going to start with very, very low storage, critically low storage. So whatever we do next year is going to depend on what that 2026 water year snowpack looks like. And with that, I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. King. Questions for Dr. King on water update? Director Glacial.
Dr. King, I have a question. I saw how they were getting the debris picked up with what appeared to be like a chain link fence gate. Great idea. How do they get it off that gate? How do they dump it?
Larry, you were on the spot. I think we have Larry in the audience, right?
Yes, good morning, folks. Yes, sir. To answer your question, sir, our staff from Socorro office came down and they used that method. What they were doing, it was a crane that was moving it to the side, and then they were laying it down, and then other personnel were emptying, you know, just
Pitching it off.
Yes, sir. There's a big old pile, and that is correct. It started out that way, but it is an ongoing project. Even today, they're still clearing out some the debris, and there is a plug like Dr. King had mentioned. So that plug has been included into our order that went out. So yes, sir, it is an ongoing situation, but that's how they are doing.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dr.
Larry.
Other questions of Dr. King? Thank you very much. Appreciate the water update, Dr. King.
Thank you.
All right, that brings it to item 6, which is Jim's. Oh. Mr. Narvaez.
Yes. All right, I'll give, yes, I do. I'll go ahead and give you just a quick summary for June. Like Dr. King said, we definitely would like to present a lot more detail in the next board meeting that gives the whole breakdown and the shutdown and some of the experiences we had, because we had quite a few this year that were all combined in one, but we made it through. So I'd just like to give you a quick June summary and talk briefly about the shutdown.
You have the floor.
Can you see my screen?
It's coming up right now. We see it.
All right. No secret here. This is the, as of today, the only thing we have on order is Texas 6CT. We have 103 acres on order for them, and we're delivering that alongside EBID number 1's order. The order for the west side currently is 160, which includes 130 CFX, excuse me, for the Lanyon East, and 30 CFS of that is for the 6CT, which is in the Lanyon West. So that's what's happening as of today. This will kind of go sporadic throughout the season until they're done. Eventually, we may even open up the east side for Three Saints East down there at the bottom as well. But this is as of today. Just a quick breakdown on the acres demand for the month of June. We did hit our peak, and our peak was, as expected, on our last order day. 21,100 acres went on order on June 27th. This was the 26th. We went up to the, on the 28th, excuse me, the grand total, which is the 27th summary, was 21,000. So pretty high demand. It was the highest of the season, as expected. And each day we went along, and as we went through the process of closing the season and delivering this water, on average, we're delivering about 3,000 acres per day to get those acres out. But that's the graph of the month of June. These are all the acres on order for every day, and how we placed our orders based off of that acre demand. We did have the one flat rate weekend. It was that June 14th and June 15th. This is the estimated breakdown of the acres that irrigate flat rate, total of 2,800 acres. We delivered, estimating just a 6-inch charge. Basically on that is 1,400 acre feet delivered during those times. Ditch breaks, we kept knocking on wood all the way through the end of the season, but unfortunately the Gophers had their way on us. We did have 2 ditch breaks, one in the Leesburg on the Clark lateral, and then one later, almost at the end of June, on the west side of the Chumbadino lateral. So we had 2 for the year, which is pretty good considering the amount of water we pushed. Deliveries, this is the estimated June summary. Deliveries are actually irrigations on field. Acres are the cumulative acres that were delivered, and the amount of acre feet that we charged out to those acres. The array, we had 1,026 irrigations for the month of June, irrigating to 19,648 acres. The charged acre feet, 7,021. Leesburg, 1,659 acres, 18,066. 7,858 acre feet. The east side, 450, delivered to 10,000 acres. Delivery 5,600 acre feet. West side, 714, delivered 18,000 acres. Delivery acre feet, 9,302. When you see these big differences here, this usually represents that the amount of farms that are in those areas. And the east side typically has a lot of larger farms, and not as many farms. So when you see these numbers, that's kind of what that looks like there. Leesburg having the most, naturally, because it goes through the city limits. We have a lot of small acreages in the Leesburg area, especially in the Unit 3B side, alongside with big acres that include Stallman's and the Salt Pits and those alike. But you see those high numbers for deliveries just because there is a lot of smaller acreage in the Leesburg area. So for the charges for the month of June, total deliveries 3,849 for all the areas. cumulative acres, 66,283. The charge to the farmer was 31,620. We actually diverted the amount of acre feet, 666,029, with allotment being the 87,342. That was an allotment that Dr. King said, the final one that we made, ultimately gonna be the final one. And we're estimating right now that for July, we used about 14,000. So our ending balance is gonna be somewhere between 6,000 and probably 8,000. I'm thinking once we get credits and do all the things that we do at the end of the season with bypass and those kind of things. But we came close to finishing at zero. The biggest reason that we didn't get to zero was primarily because of the late rains that we had in June. We did some operational things to try to take advantage of that, but that compiled with that weed plug really made it very difficult for us to be able to do that. And I guess you could say it was almost a blessing that we were able to get this close without and meet our demand before that plug really impacted us. So it kind of came at the right time, even though we didn't really want it to be like that. But we still were able to get the irrigations out. They were placed. So that's the good part about it. So we'll summarize July for you guys at the next board meeting. Then it'll include some of the things that we did to get to that crazy time during the plug and the royals and rain and those kind of things there. But that's the number for June. So we came close to hitting zero. We probably would have hit zero if it wasn't for the rain and the plug that kind of mucked things up, so to speak. So that's that charge there. What we wanted to also show you real quick, and we're fine tuning this as we go along. Let me see, I'm going to switch to a different screen and tell me if you can see it. Can you all see this screen?
Yes.
Okay. This is going to be the dashboard that Joe has been working hard on, and we've been trying to put these data points together to kind of replace the report that I showed you, that I kind of went through. We looked at that report and we wanted to get more of a dashboard scene with it. And what this is going to be is primarily more of a planning tool. What we're going to do with this one is also put this dashboard and some of these data screenshots. You know, we yet to determine how many days a week we want to update it on the webpage, but it could even be live data too, but just depends on how we ultimately work that out. But what this is basically the dashboard, and it'll kind of allow us to also look at the past data, and it'll allow us to look at planning data, which for instance, this here is total pending orders. There's only 13 orders right now that are pending for Texas. That's why it shows that number there. And then these are going to be summaries of the amount of deliveries, which is irrigations, consumptions per day, and the acres delivered per day. We'll be able to put some filters in there. So if you want to see what was happening in the central area, you could filter out by that, and these numbers will change accordingly. So it makes it more live so you can actually see what's happening. We can fine tune the data better. So we're still working on this one here, but we hope to have this here maybe by the next board meeting. We'll just keep fine tuning this one. But the hopes for this is to actually put this on the webpage so it's more interactive, and farmers can see, what the demands are for the year, and what the planning is and what we're looking at as far as estimates starting and stopping. So as this showed here, the shut-off day estimated, as I presented earlier this year, was anywhere between July 5th and July 8th. We actually shut down July 8th for the final diversion, which was the west side yesterday. I know I'm going backwards. Let me start again. The Leesburg actually shut down on Sunday, which was July 5th, I believe. July 6th on Sunday morning, followed by the east side that afternoon, also July 6th. We continued irrigations on delivery on Monday, July 7th for the array and the west side. On yesterday, July 8th, the array shut down in the morning, followed by the west side shutting down later that afternoon at 1600. So we did close our final delivery and diversion on July 8th. That was the final day for this irrigation season. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vice. On the daily consumption, is that based on diversions or account charges to our members?
These are account charges to the members.
Thank you.
So we will include a actual diversion part of this dashboard. This is just mostly deliveries and irrigation stuff. So we will have a section that's gonna include, diversions.
Director Colquitt.
James, thank you very much. That was a good presentation. Do we know how much water is lost during ditch breaks? Is that something we have any idea?
I mean, yeah, you could actually figure that out. I mean, during our process of the report, you know, when we get out there after we've stopped it, which typically is usually pretty quick, you may get one run for maybe 1 or 2 hours. But you just take a look at the field, and you can estimate the amount of acres that were perhaps flooded, and just look at it as an irrigation, so to speak, and you can come up with an amount. Usually when we make our report, we do say how many acres are flooded, and the amount of standing water on it, and we will estimate how much acre feet was actually lost during the ditch break. And then the other side of it too is if we know we're putting in, for instance, 10 CFS into a lateral, if that ditch break happens there, then we can estimate 10 CFS for a couple hours. So yeah, we can kind of estimate that.
Okay, thank you.
I went and looked at that one on Clark. We lost more dirt than water.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, generally in the tens of acres you get the most.
Yeah.
Nominal.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, one thing I would add, James mentioned that Array shut down yesterday morning. At that point, we went on release accounting for charges to El Paso. It's true the west side was still on, but the water for the west side's delivery had been released a couple of days before. So Array was, with the shutdown of Array, we went on release accounting for the remainder of the season.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. King. Any other questions? Mr. Vice, Dr. King, thank you very much for the water update.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 6. The 2025 resolution 2025 is it 01B, an open meeting act resolution amendment. Mr. Smith.
Mr. President, this is a second amendment to our Open Meetings Act resolution. We discovered in the Open Meetings Act resolution, section 9, it directed people to contact Naomi Taveros rather than the executive assistant. So this amendment is to change the language, directing people who need assistance to contact the executive assistant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. That resolution is in your board packet. Questions on the resolution?
Make resolution 2025-01B.
Second. I have a motion from Director Rosa, seconded by Director Colquitt, to approve resolution 2025-01B. Discussion. Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The opinion of the president, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 7. The potential approval of a second amendment to the memorandum of understanding. The second amendment or second renewal?
It's the same.
Okay, very good. Potential approval of second amendment to the memorandum of understanding between EBID and the city of Las Cruces for the use of district drains, canals, and laterals as multi-use non-motorized pathways. Mr. Lutz.
And Mr. Chair, it's referred to as the second amendment because it essentially amends the end date for the memorandum of understanding. It relates to special use permit requests that the city of Las Cruces has made. I guess the status of which we'll discuss later. Gary brought to my attention that the memorandum of understanding had expired under the first amendment in roughly September or October of last year. I've made a second amendment that was patterned after the first amendment. I reached out to the city attorney of City of Las Cruces. I have not heard a response. I have not reviewed the memorandum of understanding substantively to see if there's updates. My understanding is it appears to have worked well, but my what I would say to the board is that it has been the practice when the memorandum of understanding has been in place to have that as one of the conditions for a special use permit for the city of Las Cruces. So if the city of Las Cruces' special use permit is to be approved, it would be recommended that the memorandum of understanding has been extended.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Mr. Smith, do you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Thank you. Questions from the board? First, just what is the will of the board? Probably should open this with a motion.
So, Mr. President, I'll move to accept the MOU. That said, I'm not ready to vote in approval of.
That's fine. So that is an emotion to do we have a resolution number on that?
I don't believe it's crafted as a resolution.
It's an amendment to an existing.
Very good. That's an emotion to approve the amendment to the existing MOU
Yes.
from Director Roby Rosa. Seconded by Director Sloan. Okay, we're open for discussion. Mr. Roby Rosa.
So, it would be great if we could get a little bit of background on this and why we entered into this MOU to begin with.
And so I believe that is provided in the background materials. I'm looking for something specifically in the MOU at the moment. We have, is there a cover letter on the background material discussing that? I don't remember what I read. So, I mean, here are the recital from the city of Las Cruces' resolution. So the city of Las Cruces and Butte Irrigation District desire to develop a system of trails. Memorandum of understanding establishes the means to develop a trail system. The trail system would connect to and expand the existing alternative transportation network. Trail system would also expand the alternative recreation network to take advantage of the excellent climate that Las Cruces offers. That is in the recitals in the city's resolution.
So what was the benefit to EBID to allowing trails to be constructed on our property?
Mr. Esslinger.
You know, Mr. President, Director Rosa, many years ago, the state representing Las Cruces was Joni Gutierrez. And there was a issue regarding them, the city building the the dam that's up there on Telshore. And they were constructing the outflow channel to the river to release any water that would be stored behind that. In their planning design, they included the Doniana drain, or quite a portion from where it enters in. And it used to be the drain that would drain to the river or turn and drain to Burn Lake. So we were approached by the Joni Gutierrez and asked if EBID would participate in allowing this drain to be incorporated with the outfall. And we told them no. And she said, why? And we said, because that drain can only be used for agricultural purposes. And it cannot be allowed for any recreational use at all. And she said, well, what can we do? And I said, well, it'll take an act of legislation to get the indemnity and liability off of EBID if somebody else is going to use our drain. So she went to the state legislator and got a bill passed. It's called the Trails Act. And because of that Trails Act, we were then allowed to be indemnified by any accidents or anything that would happen on our drain. And then we required the city to apply for a special use permit to then put the trail on our drain bank and extend it all the way down to the river. And that began the first phase of trails within the city of Las Cruces, and it took it all the way down to the river floodplain and then back to La Llorona. And so it was something that the city wanted, something that the board of EBID said it will work as long as we don't have any liability on it. And since then, other trails have been put into the city limits to allow pedestrians to walk on some of our canal banks. And so we were approached last year during my tenure that the city wanted to build another trail over by University Street and between the Convention Center and the Marriott Hotel. And so in doing that research, I found out, well, we don't have, our permit, our MOU expired. And that's why, you know, I contacted David and said, we need a second amendment if we're gonna continue to allow trails within the city limits on our canal banks. And that's sort of the background that created the Trails Act. And it's been in place for many years.
Thank you, Mr. Esslinger. Director Reveros, you still on the floor.
Why did we waive all of the special use permit fees for the city of Las Cruces?
We did not waive all the fees, we waived the land use fee.
Land use.
The idea was just at that time, as I understand, the board was in partnership with the city and said, okay, you know, if you'll take care of our banks, and they do, they maintain one of the banks where the trails are, then we forego the land use fees.
Have we had any issues with pedestrians using our banks, as trails in the last 20 years?
No, sir.
Or since then we was entered into?
No, they function quite well. It's all designed based upon what operation needs and maintenance needs are to maintain those canal banks through the city of Las Cruces. And it's proven to be a pretty good cooperative system between the city cleaning their side and us maintaining our side. We hadn't had any we never had a break yet on those banks that are specifically for trails, but you know, there's still earth and line ditches, so you never know.
Thank you, Mr. Clayshall.
Do they come to us for a special use permit to build a new trail?
So per this MOU, they have to get a permit from engineering. But that permit is covered under the MOU. So I would look to Mr. Lutz, who has already said he's not studied the details of the MOU about whether or not those permits are subject to approval of this board if they comply with the MOU.
And I may defer, Mr. Esslinger, do you know if they had to come before the board on
Yes.
additional permits? I believe they would have.
They
Because
have to.
They had an example template that we use, and I talked to Mr. Gamboa about amending the one that is potentially before the board today to follow that language, so I think they would.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz. For the record, Mr. Smith concurred with that assessment, as did Mr. Esslin. Mr. Clayshall, you still have the floor.
No, I just want to make sure we have the last word on it, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? I have a few. Mr. Roveros, I'd like to read some things from the MOU that may address your question. So the recitals from the MOU. EBID and the city desire to facilitate the city's creation and maintenance of multi-use, non-motorized pathways on EBID property within city limits. The recitals also cite the Trails Act, which was used to indemnify the district from liability. And that EBID and the city wish to jointly and cooperatively exercise their governmental authority to enter this MOU. Article 3 of the MOU discusses the term and the effective date, and in it, it says, since this recreational use of EBID property is new and authorized under a new law, the parties understand and agree that this agreement is experimental and initially short but renewable terms for this agreement are appropriate. Both parties recognize and agree that they will be flexible in amending the terms of this agreement as experience with its implementation and use is deemed required by either party. It is my opinion that experience warrants amendment of this MOU. My two areas that principally I'm focusing on are where trails are located and the waiver of land use fees. So starting with where trails are appropriate. I want to state that I'm an avid cyclist. I use these trails along with other cyclists regularly. I appreciate their existence. I also recognize concerns for the agricultural community. I have heard regular concerns from the people I cycle with about potential negative impacts to them riding adjacent to commercial agriculture. They're concerned about the things that are being sprayed in those orchards. They're concerned about potential drift. They're concerned about their health hazards based on what is taking place with commercial agriculture. As a farmer, I am concerned about the exposure to my operation from people passing by it on a trail. I have stated numerous times that trails and commercial agricultural activity are not compatible activities. I've stated on numerous times that I will not approve a trail that is adjacent to a farm rate tract for one of our members, regardless of the desire of that specific member. There are many existing trails which pass farm rate tracts. I am not advocating for the removal of those trails. I am advocating for an amendment to this MOU that would prevent additional trails from being placed next to farm rate EBID tracts. If it is desired for a trail to be there, there is a alternative to make that happen, and that is to acquire those water rights and move them. If that is not possible, it is my opinion that trail is incompatible with the adjacent uses in that location. And I think that this MOU should be amended accordingly to address that clearly, to help the city planners in knowing where they can place a trail and what is required to place a trail if there are existing farm rate tracts there. The second item has to do with the paragraph, excuse me, Article 7, paragraph G, which states no land use fees will be charged by EBID. As an experimental policy, I think that was appropriate. Let's sort out how this is going to work. Well, let's not increase the costs to either side as we experiment with this. We've done the experimenting. These trails are valuable. They are used by the citizens and the visitors of our area. Therefore, the value of that use should be recognized by the members of our district who constructed those facilities, who pay for their continued maintenance. I believe that the continued waiver of those fees is inappropriate for the fiduciary responsibilities of this board and our district to our members. So that appears in, as I said, Article 7, paragraph G. And again, In Article 19, which talks about revenue generation, it says, other than the administrative fees authorized herein, neither party shall be allowed to charge the other or any member of the public for the use of EBID property authorized under this agreement. I'm not looking to use fees. I'm just recognizing that there's a benefit to the citizens and the visitors of Las Cruces. Las Cruces has a taxing authority to raise the money needed to provide those benefits. Land use fees are already inadequately compensating our members for the value of their facilities. At least the inadequate fees need to be paid to our members. Those are my comments. I would be happy to address any questions of the board based on those comments. Director Colquitt.
I think James speaking.
Director Sloan.
I was gonna make a motion to refer this to land use committee.
You just made it. So I have a motion on the floor to refer the approval of this amendment to the land use committee. I have a second by Director Rosa. We are open for discussion.
You have a pending motion on the floor. Before that motion. We approved it.
And I use that. So, Mr. Lutz. I look to you for a proper parliamentary procedure here. I have a pending motion. I have a motion from a member desiring to essentially, to postpone the pending motion and refer to committee. I don't know exactly what that would be.
And there's a number of ways to address it. One, Mr. Rosa could amend his prior motion or withdraw it. But I do think it has to be addressed before the submission.
So I'm gonna have a motion of precedence of some sort. So he could have moved to table it. That would be a motion of precedence. That's not exactly what he's doing. But he is asking to not act on it today, to refer it to committee. So that's a motion to postpone, which I believe is also a motion of precedence, but I'm not sure. So I look to you.
Yes, but it also had a substantive component to refer it to committee. So it wasn't exactly, it was tabling it with an asterisk.
Correct.
So again, I'm wondering if we return it back to Mr. Rosa and pulls the original motion to see whether he wants to either potentially withdraw or amend his motion.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to declare that motion to be out of order. So the motion on the floor is to approve the amendment. Mr.
I would
Rosa.
like to amend my motion to refer.
All right, I'm going to ask you to hold that for one moment because Director Colquitt was next in order. You had a question.
Oh, boy, yes, oh, Jesus, okay, she ran away.
Very good. Director Rosa, you
I'd
have.
like to amend my motion to refer or to send this to the land use committee.
I have a motion. Director Rosa, I believe, withdraws his original motion and replaces it with a motion to refer this to committee. There's a second from Director Sloan. That motion is up for discussion. Is that a properly formed motion, Mr. Lucas?
I believe so.
Thank you.
It's a semi, either amending his prior motion or withdrawing it and having a new motion, which I think is a distinction without a difference.
Thank you. Director Colquitt, she came back.
Okay, so, Greg, if I understand this correct, no new trails, what would happen to the existing trails? This is kind of, that was your wish, right? Or that was your thought, to not add more trails, but to leave the current ones in place?
Trying to decide if that is germane to the motion to refer to committee.
Oh, okay,
I think it's not.
okay,
The discussion is on the motion on the floor, which is to refer this to committee, specifically the land use committee. Discussion on that motion. Director Rosa.
Mr. President, yeah, I think that before entering into a long lasting MOU, I would rather have some more time and have our committee and our legal counsel review the MOU and make recommendations to change it forward. So that's just supporting my position to kick it to it.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. Mr. Lutz.
I would echo Mr. Rover or Director Rosa's comments that it would allow for a substantive review in addition, because we have not heard back from the City of Las Cruces Attorney's Office. It allows for time to engage with them so that it's not just being passed essentially as a proposal to the city of Las Cruces. Where if the city wanted a change, it would just end up back here anyway, because we wouldn't have a counterparty signature to it.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz. Mr. Colquitt.
How urgent is this matter? Now that it's going to the land use committee, what's our timeline, timeframe? What are we looking at?
So there is a permit that will be before us later today.
Okay.
Which appears to require this MOU in order to be approved.
Okay,
I don't know if that's accurate or not. We will review that permit at the appropriate time. But given that there's a permit that suggests that the city of Las Cruces is looking to continue activities under this MOU. And so that would make it, you know, reasonably urgent.
yes,
Mr. Smith.
So the present permit is to pipe a portion of our lateral for the purpose of putting in a trail. And I believe the city has funding that will expire, that its sole purpose is to build trails.
okay,
I can't remember what the timeline is on that, but I believe they were intending to begin this construction in December,
okay.
so.
Is there any other items the board wants the land use committee to look into, or any questions or anything like that?
Probably, but that's probably not germane to this.
It's not germane, okay,
I suspect there's a lot of things.
okay.
On Mr. Smith's point. I believe it's possible for us to act on a permit independent of an MOU. It simply would not have the, specific considerations of the MOU applied to it. I don't believe it makes it impossible for us to act on other permit requests. I have a nodding from Mr. Luke suggesting he concurs with that. Other comments? Hearing none, the motion on the floor is to refer the amendment, renewing the MOU to the land use committee. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none is the opinion of the president. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8, land use committee report. Director Colquitt.
Okay. The land use committee have met 2 times since last board meeting, once on June 13th, once on June 2nd. In your board packet, you'll find the report, page 20. I'd like to take a moment and thank David and the whole entire land use committee. They've been very cooperative and very helpful. There is the 1997 relinquishment red line, it's page 27. It is my opinion that, and then I could be wrong, but this red line gives the board more discretion. I also support the increase in application fee, the increase in application fee. I believe that this will give us an additional layer, or give the board an additional layer of discretion over all these sales of unused land. Let's see, what else was that? And with that, I'll hand it over to David. If there's anything else I haven't covered.
And Mr. Chair, I would just say that from those 2 meetings, I think Director Colquitt indicated there was a recommendation as to the next 2 agenda items. There was some discussion of the Zia Gas agreement that's continuing to be worked on. The only other item that I perhaps should clarify in the committee report, again, relating to the relinquishment policy, is the committee determined not to present to the board a specific figure for a minimum price per acre. That the recommendation was related to the policy amendments itself, leaving that issue potentially for a later time. But that's the gist of the two meetings that occurred, and I believe the second meeting was July 2nd.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lutz. Mr. Colquitt, do you have anything further to your report?
You know, I do not.
Any questions for Director Colquitt? I have two, Director Colquitt, but I think it may be more appropriate when we get to the relinquishment policy. One of them deals with directly what Mr. Lutz discussed about minimum price
Okay,
for relinquished property.
yes,
And the other, related to your comment about increased discretion for relinquishment. Those are the two items, and I think it's more appropriate to discuss when we get to the relinquishment policy. Very good.
sure.
Seeing no other questions. For your agenda. Thank you. That brings us to item 9, potential approval of policy 1997 ENG 10, relinquishment of EBID property interests. Mr. Smith and Mr. Lutz.
Mr. Chair, this was reviewed in February. At that time, the board referred it back to the Land Use Committee, specifically for the most part to attempt to craft a definition among some other changes of what would not constitute excess real property. In other words, items that would not be subject to relinquishment under any circumstances. The committee conferred over a number of months who prepared Exhibit A. The committee also had some additional changes. The application fee, it's recommended to go from $300 to $1,000. From that, a redlined version of the amendment is provided in the board packet that sets out the changes that were made. And the current recommendation of the Land Use Committee is to approve it, which would also relate to the next agenda item in terms of lifting the moratorium on land transfers. And Director Colquitt, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what he meant by the term it gave increased discretion was the status of having a blanket moratorium versus having a policy that allowed relinquishment of property interests inherently provides more discretion in terms of a review of those kinds of items. If I've gotten that wrong.
Correct.
No, correct. But I think that's what Director Coleman meant by that comment, to perhaps preemptively address one of your questions. Mr.
I didn't quite follow that. Would you restate that, please?
Sure. I think the idea is currently there's a blanket moratorium. By having a policy in place that allows relinquishment instead of just a blanket moratorium, it inherently provides the board discretion to review things on a case-by-case basis. I think that's what Director Coleman meant by that.
Thank you. Question? Director Rose, you want a motion first? I'm happy with the motion first.
Okay, I move to approve the policy for, does that have a number, David?
It would be the amendment to policy 1997 ENG 10.
Okay, I move to approve policy, the amendment to policy 1997 ENG 10.
I have a motion from Director Rosa, seconded by Director Colquitt to approve the amendment to policy 1997-ENG 10. Discussion. Director Rosa.
President, I still believe that Exhibit A is lacking in property that the district should not sell under any circumstances, at least for the time being. For example, I think that there is no reason for us to even consider selling this office building at this point, or any of our main shops. Or other sorts of property that are not just our water conveyance and drainage systems. I think that needs to be added in. I suppose
Mr. Smith,
I believe this relates to excess and unnecessary property. Which none of those fall under that category.
Right, so exhibit A is a definition of what is, what can never be considered excess property. And if we have a definition, I think we should just include everything that could in that. Within reason.
so that does bring up, while we're chewing on that, if I may, for over a second. As I'm reading this, so specifically under section B, which is the initial consideration. The board shall either approve to proceed further with the proposed transaction or deny the request. And that's it. There's no guidance there on how the board does that. I didn't see it in the red line, but I know previously existing in the policy, it had guidelines that the board had to determine that A and B were true in order to approve the request. And so that allowed us to question the requests in a way to ensure that they met the requirements of the policy. I am uncertain what standards we apply to ensure that that approval meets the requirements of this policy. And specifically, I'm having trouble figuring out exactly how to apply exhibit A. Mr. Lutz or Mr. Colquitt, is there a place that you could refer to me in the policy on how I utilize exhibit A?
Cool.
I can't even find it referred to in it.
I mean, my belief is that it had kind of a three-tier approval procedure. It's basically, it was first presented to the district engineer and or the finance director. Then it would be presented to the board for an initial review, decision to deny or approve the request to proceed. You are correct to note that it is somewhat implied that at that time, the board is basically giving it an initial look to see if it's something the board's even interested in. Not just whether it meets exhibit A, but even something that would not be considered, or even something that would be considered excess real property, it may be something the board of directors just isn't even interested in entertaining the sell. So it was left, I believe, kind of intentionally broad to give the board all those parameters.
And so that comes back to my initial question about the increased discretion. If that's what's meant by increased discretion, not simply the removal of the moratorium, I am concerned about a policy that overly grants the discretion to separate property from the district by this body. The constraints on that should not be something that is set potentially ad hoc on a case-by-case basis, where a member of our district has to follow every one of those transactions and attend every board meeting that they occur in to ensure that the interests of the members are being met. When they should attend, when they should pay attention, is when we're passing or amending this policy. And that the rest of it should be fairly administrative, with this body being the last judgmental authority on that. I'm weary or leery or concerned about excessive discretion of this body on every transaction. So presumably, in the definitions, we have excess real property. Presumably, in the initial consideration, the board has to determine if it actually is excess real property. Was that the intention of the policy?
I believe so, yes.
I would
Doesn't
ask,
it go to, I'm sorry to interrupt, doesn't it go to staff first? And then they determine if it's even gonna go to the board? Right?
I don't know the staff gets
Mr.
to this,
President,
but
That,
Mr. Smith,
that's the way this reads, in my opinion, the finance director and engineering will present an application to the board if it's deemed appropriate. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, I wanna buy the first mile of the Leesburg Canal, and say, thanks for your interest. You know, that's never coming before the board. Now, if there are drains and we have pieces of property that are not drains, not laterals, that are just sitting out there. That maybe there was an intent at some point in time to use them for something that nobody knows. You know, but, you know, I'm of the opinion, these are all handled on a case by case basis. The policy, they have to file an application, this has to be presented to the board by the finance director and engineering, which means it has at least been vetted to that point. But you want discretion.
thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. President.
Mr. Esslinger.
Yeah, and that's been the case before. A lot of these requests get to engineering and to the manager and finance director, and they're denied just on the basis of Mr. Smith's.
They just don't meet the criteria.
They just don't meet it. There are cases where we have determined that we can't go any further unless you go to the board. And then the board then makes that decision, nah, we're not gonna do it, or yeah, but here's your condition. And then that's when we proceed. But it's pretty much been the standard that in many cases, we just tell people from the engineering department, from the manager, no, it's not gonna happen. And it stopped.
Mr. President, I think that if we were to relinquish any property, we would need to go through a similar procedure to what we do with, suspensions and transfers. Is that something that we've done before?
Not that I'm aware of.
So what you're suggesting is that the relinquishment policy would create, we would need to create a quasi judicial body that's acting on whether or not to relinquish the property. I'm suggesting that we need to implement the formality of that process when considering relinquishing property. And not take it so lightly as a typical motion. That way we ask ourselves the questions. Make sure that we follow procedure. Thank you. So, Mr. Smith,
The other thing to keep in mind is it's highly unlikely we're selling property less than $5,000. I mean, I can see instances where that may occur, but typically we're gonna be constrained by state regulation too. And it's gonna require DFA approval. So, you know, it's not simply, I vote to sell this and we sell it. There's a lot more to it than that.
thank you, Mr. Smith. I'm not particularly objectionable to formalizing the process in this policy because it is a big deal when we are relinquishing property. Would take me a while to think through how I would support that though. Some of my concerns may just be in how the policy is organized. We have a statement of policy. And so to get to Mr. Smith's point about staff being the kind of the gatekeeper before the board. I don't see that gatekeeping function being a step in this policy. I see an application procedure where someone pays a non-refundable $1,000 application fee. And then in the statement of policy, it says all requests will be considered by the board. And so staff obviously gets a recommendation process in this. In fact, I believe it states that they must get one. I don't see where it says that they can simply tell somebody no, and they cannot bring their case to the board. Am I misunderstanding? I suspect people will be highly influenced by staff saying, I don't think you should do this, we're not gonna recommend it. Don't apply.
But if you only give $1,000, you can.
But if you wanna pay your fee and go before the board. Is there something in this policy that I'm missing that grants staff the ability to say no to relinquishment prior to it coming to this board? Let me see if I can get that question answered, but Mr. Lutz or Mr. Smith?
In my opinion, the idea of the initial board review was that the application would be made to staff and the board would then look at it just to see if there was something the board would even entertain.
But if staff is not entertaining it, am I
I
missing something that allows the staff to prevent it from coming to the board?
didn't see anything explicit in the policy and I apologize, Mr. Smith, if I'm coming out a little differently than you were on that. But I had presumed that staff would bring an application for the board and the board's just gonna say, no, we don't wanna sell the main building. Thank you for applying.
Or the first mile of Leesburg, I believe it was.
And then if you look at the next step, which is the final consideration step, that is when staff actually presents a recommendation to approve or deny when it has site improvement survey appraisal, and it has the complete set of items that a full application would require.
I have it under initial consideration as well, under B1. Mr. Smith,
So I believe Mr. Lutz is correct, but basically this is a 3-tiered process. They send a letter to me, to engineering, to the finance director that says, hey, I want to do this. Here's what I'm looking to purchase. Here's the information that you require. I'm giving you all of this information, and it comes before the board and the board says, yes, proceed with this process, or no, we're not going to consider selling that piece of property. If you do consider it, then you go to final consideration, which means they have to provide the survey, the improvements and appraisal, and then the board will appraise. Will approve or deny. But the initial consideration is the board determining whether or not that's even a piece of property you will consider relinquishing or selling. But I believe, there's language in here that gives staff discretion that we will only relinquish property interests which no longer serve EBID purposes if staff, who, no offense, likely has a better idea whether it serves EBID than the board, determines that it is not subject to relinquishment or sale, or not selling. And it won't be coming before the board.
so if I'm not advocating one way or the other for that at this moment. What I am saying is the policy doesn't seem to say that. Mr. Glacial,
Do we want to task Mr. Lutz with refining the language and coming back to us?
well, that is what has occurred, and this is the initial language. If there are additional refinements, this is the time for us. If we're saying we either are approving this as presented, or we're not approving it as presented, and then asking something different of the land use committee and or staff.
Yeah, it seems like it needs to be more clearly defined to me.
Mr. Sloan,
I don't know how this would be as procedural wise, but like that initial chance for the board to give a thumbs up or thumbs down, would that be in open meetings or would that be in?
it's in this meeting.
No, I know, but like.
In the future.
In the future, I'm
Yeah,
saying.
a regular board.
Would that be
opens,
like,
right?
would that be a motion or how would that be presented? Would you give it, when you're gonna give the initial yay or nay,
It's
proceed or not proceed?
So the relinquishment would be an agenda item.
Then it would be,
We would discuss the relinquishment, there'd be a motion to approve, and it would pass or fail.
but then it'd have to go through another procedural.
So after the initial consideration, then there's the final consideration, and in between those two,
The discovery or.
things that cost money that the applicant must do.
Then there'll be then there'll be another approval. at the
We
end.
have to approve the survey and the appraised purchase price.
Correct.
I mean, I need to read. Without taking the time to read through the final consideration items, there are things that we have to consider at final consideration. The initial consideration is intended to be. Does the board of directors determine the property is not needed for EBID purposes and that the relinquishment is in the best interest of EBID? It says the board of directors must determine that before it can be considered for relinquishment. So that's the initial consideration. Director Roberts.
President, for relinquishment of land. And in general for other, things of this series of nature, would it, is it, first of all, is it possible, and second, would it make sense to require, unanimous consent of the board? Because I would
I
not
do
want to
not-
sell property
no, I
on
do
a
not-
5-4 vote.
I do not believe that we can change the rules of. No, I don't believe we can require a unanimous decision in policy. Mr. Lutz, do you have a different opinion on that?
I don't.
Yeah, that's like, that's changing the rules of the majority of the body. And I don't believe that we can do that in policy.
Okay, well, it would, I don't think it would feel very good to sell land, on a 5-4 vote, but if that's the rules then.
It may not feel good, but I believe that is the structure of our governing body.
In that case, I would like to amend my motion to, refer this to land use committee.
Second.
I have a motion from Director Rover, seconded by Director Colquitt to refer this committee discussion.
If,
Director Rover.
in this, Mr. President, I think we should just lay out all of our concerns, in bullet points, just so that the land use committee is. Okay,
In this discussion, I think that is appropriate.
so
If you-
I would like, further definition in exhibit A. And I think the rest were your concerns, Mr. President.
Rafa, you mentioned earlier that you wanted to list things like the building, just to be
Just
sure.
not, yeah.
Is that a request of the land use committee?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, so
yeah, things that are not part of our conveyance and drainage system.
I think, yeah.
So the question I'm having of Mr. Smith is that I believe in our discussion, there was a suggestion that there should be something in policy that would allow staff to shut this down before, rather than the initial consideration of the board.
So I think under the procedure for all property interests, it's a place it would appear under A, application, where they're submitting a letter to the manager, engineer, or finance director. Item, paragraph 3 would be staff will make a determination about whether it is presented to the board. Or staff is authorized to determine whether the application goes forward.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate you allowing me to put you under the gun and state that clearly.
Greg, do you have bullet points for the land use committee?
I do. So under item B2, where we're approving to proceed further. I would like it stated there. The things that must be met. For the board to. Approve the initial consideration. We state a couple of them, in the statement of policy. Property not needed for EBID purposes, and it's in the best interest of EBID. Restating those would be good, and then whatever else it is that the board should consider, does it do X? However, we're referring to, excess property, I don't know what the right answers there are, but I'd like the board to be able to simply have a checklist to say it meets all the boxes. And if it doesn't, explain why we're voting for it anyways. And then the second one. Under final consideration. Okay. We've got to have some minimum value. We've got to guide folks with this policy about, don't think you're coming to us and asking, and you're gonna pay us $2,000 an acre for a drain.
You would like a minimum, price.
Like, I really don't care what you find an appraiser to say, I'm not selling you a drain for that. We need some way that this board can set a value, have a way to amend that value, and that guides people applying for this, don't even bother going through this process if you think you're paying less than this for it. Director Colquitt.
Is this an appropriate time for the board to discuss a minimum price per acre? Because what I'm thinking is gonna
So
happen.
probably not under the confines of this motion, which was just to give you bullet points of things that we'd like in the policy.
Okay,
So when that comes back before us and we're approving the policy, that would be a time.
okay.
Cause I don't even know what policy you're gonna end up presenting to us yet, so.
Okay.
Director Clay.
My cousin, was an appraiser for a lot of years. He did not have universal respect for other appraisers. He did a lot of expert witness work before and was very successful at it. But he always told me that the letters MAI after an appraiser's name stood for made as instructed. So I think we need to have a voice in the appraiser. Somewhere, I don't trust them all.
Thank you, Director Facial. Director Roberosa.
So don't get frustrated, land use committee, that's how writing important policies goes, it's back and forth until we get it right, and this is a very important policy, so, just keep it up and, we'll get to our meeting.
I appreciate that sentiment, Mr. Roberosa. Further discussion on the motion, which is to refer policy 1997 ENG 10 as amended to the land use committee. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any of the president, the ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. It is referred back to committee. Brings us to item 10, the potential approval to lift the moratorium on land transfer, resolution 2025-11. Mr. Smith.
Given the fact that you did not approve the previous policy, I would recommend postponing a vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. What is the will of the board?
Move to postpone, a vote on the lifting of the moratorium for pollution funds
Until
the things, no, yeah, well, we set an arbitrary date and just say until the land use committee brings back the previous policy, or do we have to say until the August?
So it's not an arbitrary date, it's just an uncertain date.
Okay,
And yes, we can set it for an uncertain date, but the determination of that uncertain date is
the approval of the policy to relieve land.
or the reconsideration. So the motion on the floor is to postpone consideration of resolution 2025-11 until the board meeting, which we are next considering the amendment to policy 1997 ENG 10.
Okay.
Seconded by Director Sloan. Any discussion? Hearing none, those all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any present, the ayes have it, the motion passed unanimously. Calendar of events, Mr. Smith.
Mr. President. First item on the calendar is the Rio Chama Experience. It's water leaders conference that I'm attending this weekend in Chama with our legislators and water managers from around the state. Second item is harassment training for our managers, which is on July 17th, which Director Colquitt and Director Tharp must attend. Put that on calendar, please.
Please.
There is that should be Groundwater Management Districts Association. The 2025 summer conference is July 21st through 23rd in Idaho Falls, Idaho. I know this has been suggested that we attend. I'm not sure if anyone has the ability or time to attend that meeting.
Would you like to discuss that now or wait till you finish the calendar?
That's up to you. How would you like to handle it?
Let's go ahead and discuss it now. So the Groundwater Management District Association. You Mexico has been working on administrative rules for the Lower Rio Grande for the past couple decades. And there have been discussions about how a groundwater management district might work in our area. They have an association, they have a conference. It's a good place for us to get ideas on what may or may not work for our area. That said, the ability to attend this conference is really hard right now. We have numerous things going on. Mr. Smith is already traveling to numerous conferences, taking him out of the district. I have numerous requirements of my time by the district over the next couple of months. I am really not available to attend. I spoke with Director Rosa. He's also not available to attend. That said, if the board wishes to send one of its other members to this conference, they can. Is there a desire by any of our board members to attend this conference on behalf of EBID? All right, that's the reason it's on the calendar of events. That's the reason that Mr. Smith is not recommending staff attend. That is the reason I am not recommending board members attend. Hearing no different opinion from the board. Mr. Smith, you may continue.
Next item on the calendar is it's actually the NWRA Western Water Seminar, July 29th through the 31st in Park City. I will be attending that. Travel has been approved from the previous board meeting. Next item on the calendar is a meeting with the states in Denver. The initial dates were August 5th and 6th. I believe dates currently being discussed are August 7th and 8th. We need to approve travel for that trip.
Are you going to be asking us to approve travel for the next two items on the agenda also?
Yes.
Without objection, I'm going to let Mr. Smith finish the calendar of events and then we'll look at approving travel.
Next item is the New Mexico Water Law Conference held in Santa Fe. That will be September 11th to the 12th. I can describe that if you want me to. That's an annual water conference where all of our friends from the north gather and discuss all the water issues in New Mexico. Again, it's been suggested that we have representation there. And then finally, the Coalition of Rio Grande Water Users 2025 conference. This is put on by Water Strategies. It's September 30th through October 2nd in Santa Fe. I will note we don't have it on the calendar, but I believe that is going to conflict with hearing in the Supreme Court case.
So, given that, specifically with the coalition, you want to approve travel for that at this time?
We don't necessarily need to.
Very good. The hearing has not yet been ordered. So we're guessing when it's going to be ordered, but I do think it's appropriate to put on approving travel to the coalition until we know what other travel requirements we may have regarding Texas to New Mexico. So with that, there are two items that travel is being requested for. They are the meeting of the states in Texas v. New Mexico and Denver, Colorado, which currently is expected to be August 7th and 8th. I am expected to attend that legal review committee. Which members of the legal review committee are available to go?
Can't make the 7th and 8th. I could have made the 5th and 6th. 7th.
Okay, Director Roverosa is unavailable. And this may change. So let me ask you this, are there any members of the legal review committee who are simply saying, I'm not going to Denver, I don't care what date it is?
I might be one. You're saying August 5th through 6th?
I don't know what date it is.
Or, okay, yeah, it's early August is gonna be tough for me.
Director Colquitt is saying he's out.
But my buddy John, I think really likes Denver.
That was it.
No, I don't like that at all.
So,
The airport, Tom.
so what I'm hearing is potentially 3 members of the legal review committee, depending on the dates. Mr. Glacial, is that accurate?
I can't say that far out.
2 members of the legal review committee, depending on date depending. Mr. Smith, how many members of staff and consultants do you require?
Myself, Dr. King, and our legal counsel.
So the request for approval for travel is for 2 board members, the manager, and 3 consultants.
I'd like to make a motion to approve travel for.
Let me let this motion be stated first.
Oh, okay, for the manager, legal, Dr. King, and 2 board members to Denver, whenever that may be.
Thank you. That's the motion on the floor. All actual expenses.
And actual expense, all
For
that.
all actual expenses. That's the motion on the floor.
Who's it for again?
Second.
Seconded. All right. We'll get to discussion in just one moment. Director Flashels, Mr. Franzoy.
We no longer approve travel for consultants.
Aha.
That's right, they just bill us at the end of the deal, don't they?
I mean, I think we authorize them traveling to, we don't want them willy-nilly going to places and billing us for
Well,
it.
that's a really good question. What is within the both the requirement and the authority of this board to approve, disallow?
Our consultants operate at our discretion, so I think they need your direction to attend. We no longer book travel for consultants.
Mr. Franzoy, is that? Adequate? Thank you. Mr. Lee, thank you.
Right, they're
I'll change my
outside,
motion.
they're outside of the travel policy.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with the board saying. Who have been going, billing us pursuant to the contract. But that they're not subject to the policy, so. Mr. Burns is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz. Mr. Glacial.
I was trying to keep up with the program for exactly who we're approving travel for.
So, our hydrologist, our 2 water counselors, our manager, and potentially Mr. Rosa and myself, depending on the dates. Discussion. Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opinion of the president.
Second. Oh, you did. Okay.
Opinion of the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. Brings us to New Mexico Water Law Conference. So this is a good conference to attend, again, specifically for our legal review committee, interfacing with the other authorities in water law within our state, hearing the other topics that could potentially impact us in our district. This is a good conference to attend. I've attended it multiple times. I would, in order to encompass the potential of our entire legal committee attending, I would ask approval of up to 4 board members for the conference. Mr. Smith, how many staff members would you like to hear?
One, that will be.
Which would be yourself? Yes. Are we gonna approve attendance by our consultants as well? Yes. Just legal or hydrologists also?
Let's go ahead and approve it.
Okay, so the request from Mr. Smith has been to approve travel for himself. And again, our hydrologist and our 2 water legal consultants. What is the will of the board?
I make a motion to approve travel and all expenses incurred for the New Mexico Water Law Conference and up to 4 board members.
So as I understand the motion is stated, the motion is to approve travel to the New Mexico Water Law Conference for all actual expenses for 4 board members, the manager, and 3 consultants.
That's correct.
Seconded by Director Rosa. Any discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I can attend that.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. Mr. Smith, anything further on the calendar? Thank you. General administrative. Byron. Oh. I don't see her.
Said she was joining someone.
Ah, I see her. Now, good morning, Ms. Byron.
Good morning.
There we go.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. First off is the cash balances report. It looks a little different than in previous months because it is reflecting a lot of activity from the ISC grant. Since this report was generated, we have had the checks for the approximately $2 million be cashed for the large equipment for the ISC grant, and we have today received the reimbursement of about $1 million for some of that equipment. We had previously received almost $1 million, and that is reflected in these numbers. So that brings us to the book cash is pretty close to what we have. We are sending another $500,000 back to our investments as we had used our investments to pay for those grant purchases. And some other not common expenses. We had a pump repair, we bought some pipe for a project, we had our annual financial software come due, and payment to EPE for electrical hookup. We had, again, as I mentioned, those transfers in from the investments. We did have some grant proceeds. For example, we received our reimbursement for the Ford F-250s and some other equipment. We have not yet received our investment report for the month of June. Therefore, we still have the interest rate for May showing here. We're still in fairly good shape, and I will stand for any questions.
Questions on the statement of cash from Ms. Byron? Hearing none, that brings us to item 13B, which is resolution 2025-10, approval of disposition of assets.
This one is very, very similar to the one I presented at the last board meeting. There were some additional items that were provided to me that were requested to be disposed of pretty much by auction. The list on Exhibit A is for those items with an expected resale value of less than $5,000. And the list on Exhibit B is for those with possible resale value of over $5,000. We have to request permission from the DFA for the items over $5,000 estimated resale value. The approval, or they don't really approve, the acknowledgement by the state auditor has been received for the first set of items, and this is a request to the board for approval for putting these items up for auction.
Thank you. Questions regarding the resolution 2025-10, approval of disposition of assets? Hearing none, what's the will of the board?
I move to approve resolution 2025-10.
I have a motion for Director Sloan to approve resolution 2025-10.
Second.
Seconded by Director Clayshall. Discussion. Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. President, the ayes have it. Motion passed unanimously. 13C, explanation of the Weary grant. That you, Mr. Francois?
That's fine, maybe. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys the short and sweet explanation of this grant, given the kind of the timing of this. So this is the New Mexico Weary Agricultural Water Resilience Program. New Mexico legislature has appropriated $4.5 million for individual projects with a maximum award of $250,000. Eligible applicants are kind of listed here. You don't necessarily have to worry about any applicant that's eligible except for us, as we are an irrigation district. The caveat here is that eligible applicants must be partnered with a farmer or a rancher for the projects. And so kind of the gist behind this and why I wanted to present this to you guys is to reach out to your constituents. You know, we can distribute this information. I'll have more detailed information, and I will be the point of contact working with those constituents to help them receive these funds if they wish or desire to apply for these grant projects. There is a whole application process. It's very detailed. It's on their website. I will walk everybody through getting the templates and things put together for their submissions, as we'll be their partner. An important note is that project funds must be expended from September 15th of this year to June 30th of next year. The applications are due on the 28th of July this month. So very tight turnaround. The webinar was the 1st of July. That is also available on the website if you want to go and get some more information, and I can provide that to you as well. And this is just kind of the evaluation criteria that Weary's looking at. There's no need to divulge in the detail of this. As I mentioned, I will help any constituents apply for this funding, and I can walk them through the evaluation criteria, making sure they have all the resources necessary for them to apply. Some of the projects for this is going to be drip irrigation projects. There's going to be the solar wells that you can use for your ranching wells, as well as the shade balls that you can use. There's various other water conservation projects that are considered. They have to be lined with the Office of State Engineers 50-year plan. But as we kind of get this information out and I put it together a better package for you guys to deliver to constituents and have conversations with them, I will get you kind of a list of acceptable projects under this. I just wanted to let you guys know, put it on your radar. I will be sending you out information. Just have them reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I'm volunteering my time. Based on my calculations, I mean, there's a maximum award. If every project is awarded a maximum, 18 projects will be selected. The turnaround is tight. I know it's not the best time of year for constituents, but happy to help and assist in any way I can.
Thank you, Mr. Franzoy. Mr. Roberos, I think Mr. Franzoy, what are these projects that have to be implemented on the farm, or are these projects that are implemented in the district for the benefit of farmers and ranchers?
I believe they have to be implemented in conjunction with a farmer rancher. I think I can get some more information from Weary. I don't think that they want that as like us implementing a project in the district's constituents benefit on their behalf. It has to be partnered with the land user.
So okay, do you have, or does engineering have ideas as to what sorts of projects the district would be interested in associating with in getting projects applied for?
Yeah, I think anything that, from my perspective, anything that conserves water, obviously, you know, drip irrigation, they did mention, you know, if people wanted to install sprinkler systems on their farms, I think kind of the project there on the California extension, things like that, where we can maybe create a different diversion point that saves water. And then, you know, things of that nature, I would say. So large scale project, there could be some smaller scale projects, but kind of farm specific.
How would the district be involved with installing sprinklers in,
The district is not involved in installing the sprinklers.
so the district's just involved with the application?
Fiduciary, basically, this has to be run through a public entity. EBID can be that entity, the Soil and Water Conservation District can be that entity. They have to apply with a governmental partner. So we won't do any of the work. Joel will be doing basically administration. But the farmers and ranchers really need to come to us with projects they want to put in, not the other way around.
They cannot directly receive award of the money. However, we can, and we can have it distributed for their projects, if that makes sense. Yes, sir.
On that drip system, is that only for permanent system, or are they now gonna finance temporary drip?
That is a good question. I would assume that they would do both.
Because presently NRCS won't fund temporary table, just permanent system.
I believe as long as it conserves water, it's eligible under this program, but there is some of the criteria I can get in further detail with, that's in alignment with the 50-year plan and stuff. I'll distribute you guys more detailed information as I get it.
This is a different model. It's not in RCS.
It's not.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Are partnering with a farmer rancher, would they put 50% of money, or is this not?
I believe that this is just a full award to them. There's no cost share in that. The only reason we're partnering is because we can distribute the funds for the project, and help with the administrative work.
Director Rosie, another project that I've been told can facilitate this grant would be flood control. And improvements to protect farmers from wild arroyos and things like that. So again, I think there's quite a few different programs that could be beneficial to this.
And I'll work on getting you guys a detailed list of bullet points and projects that the Weary team is looking to consider for this level of funding. And I'll distribute that information to you guys, but I would really encourage you guys to speak to your different precincts and reach out to your constituents and say, I mean, you guys know your area better than I do, and say, hey, I know you were talking about getting maybe some drip irrigation system on this farm. We have a program, you know, taking those steps. If you guys know any ranchers, I'd be happy to help them with the process and getting them in touch with the right people as well.
Any further, Director Colquitt?
What counties are, does this encompass? Is this Diana,
It's the Lower Rio Grande,
all Lower Rio Grande?
correct?
Are you sure? I think it's statewide.
It's statewide.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, so you can expect all of
The Middle Rio
executives
too?
in Northern New Mexico to apply because. Anyway,
Will this be on the website, or how will we get this out, Eddie? And then,
we could put it on the website.
okay, and then. Obviously, EBID is just a fiduciary, whatever, middle house. But you're gonna be working on this, right?
Correct.
So,
In a sense, I'm gonna guide others how to fill out their application. I'm not gonna do their applications for them.
okay.
Yeah.
And I guess the board's good with that, I take it, I mean, is that using?
I mean, are you asking me what the board's good with?
Well, not that, no, I guess I'm talking to the board as a whole, but, Joe's time costs money, right? So if we do this, which I think this is good. We're just using the district's funds for this? Is that right?
not clear whether there's.
I can
administrative
respond
money.
to that. Yeah, so I'm gonna build all the templates out for them. I'll have my template email when they come to ask me questions. I will just send them that email. Here's all the applications, everything you have to fill out. I don't think it would be a burden of my time.
Okay, it's, you're not gonna be spending more time on this.
And then more of the specific questions, I'll have them reach out to the Weary team because they're the ones administering the grant.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's good, Joe.
Any other questions, Mr. Francis?
Thank you very much for the information, today, Mr. Franzoy. So again, anyone that's listening, if you have any interest in this at all, please contact Mr. Franzoy, find out if there's a way that you can partner with the district and put the use of these grant funds. That brings us to manager's update, Mr. Smith.
Mr. President, I will be brief. King and James reported on our first water season. I survived my first water season unscathed with no major disasters, so the nice way to ease into running water. So now we're switching gears to maintenance and construction. We'll begin having those meetings to set priorities next week, and we're still waiting on funding. We still have $30 million outstanding with FSA that we have been told is not dead. But we have not received confirmation that that money is still ours. And we're just getting ready to get back to construction, which is what we'll be spending the next 9 months doing. That's all I have for the manager's update.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. If those funds clear up, what's EBID's expected utilization of those funds? What are we looking to change in our maintenance? And
We've identified the initial $15 million. We have a scope of work. We have projects already lined up and identified for those, which are predominantly piping, laterals, and improving infrastructure. And then there's another 15 million that we have not yet identified what we're going to do with that money. And a portion of it, roughly 5 million. 5 million is also a pass through to our constituents. They can identify projects.
Similar to the WIRI grant.
Program.
thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Any questions of Mr. Smith on the manager's update? And that brings us to engineering and maintenance update. Rubio.
Mr. President, no major updates at this moment. As Josh had mentioned here, the next week, we're gonna start prioritizing and so we're gonna do in the construction season. Leo and I will get together as well as the rest of the engineering and maintenance managers. And we'll set up a list of projects that need to be taken care of within the system and prioritize from there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rubio. As for our board members, as you get feedback from our members on what went well, and where there was struggles in delivery during the season, if you would please ask our members to formalize their experience and get that information to Mr. Smith to pass on and help guide maintenance in the coming season. Mr. Smith.
If I may please tell when you talk to, I mean, when water's running, you identify issues. So if there are maintenance requests, get on the website, use the app, and get those in early so that we can begin getting those issues taken care of. Leaky turnouts, they don't leak when they're dry, you know? So if those issues are identified, let's get those taken care of now.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Get on the website, find the maintenance request app, and put in those maintenance requests. Yeah, utilize the technology as much as possible. Thank you for mentioning that.
Mr. President.
Mr. Eslinger.
One other thing is, coordination, as we prioritize where we're gonna pipe laterals and do construction, we need to make sure that the farmer isn't using that lateral for pumping into that system for the rest of the season. So we need that cooperation from the farmer as well to notify engineering or the manager that they're utilizing that portion of the lateral for irrigation purposes.
They're like, I'm unaware that you're planning to pipe any of the lateral near me. But is that simply because I don't know or
We'll be coordinating with key stakeholders.
Okay, so that those members will get informed at some point.
None of that's gonna be a great issue, so.
Okay, but that is an excellent point. I use the lateral for conveyance during outside of irrigation season, so. Yeah, work together, it makes these projects and their impacts to our members during construction, go by much easier. Thank you for all of that. Anything further on engineering and maintenance update?
No, sir.
Thank you. Brings us to the approval of the consent agenda. I had a few items that I wanted to pull, please, from the consent agenda. I would like to pull the application from LCL Holdings for the new installation of a force main pipe, parallel for the force main. The Comcast for the buried fiber optic line crossing the Walters lateral, and the city of Las Cruces permit.
Mr. President, I need to recuse myself from license 94 and 93.
Is 93 the two gates? Or one of those is the two gates on the Butte drain. So thank you very much for that. I would ask for that to be pulled as well. Are there any other permits that wish to be pulled from the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
There's a motion from Director Rosa to approve the consent agenda.
One second.
Seconded by Director Garai. Any discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. Director Tharp is requested to recuse himself from two permits. One of them is for two gates on the Sea drain. I would ask the board to act on that permit. What is the will of the board? The permit on the two gates to the drain.
I make a motion to, I make a motion to pass.
Approve.
Yeah, approve, thank you, not pass. Approve the two gates on the drain, that would be license 093.
That's 094.
I'm sorry, 094.
Thank you. I have a motion from Director Colquitt to approve license 2025-L-094.
Let me double check that.
Seconded by Director Garai, and we're just verifying that we've got the right.
That's correct.
Thank you. Discussion.
Just explain to me what this is.
The gates on the drain.
Yeah.
I believe there's two harvest.
Oh,
gates.
harvest gate, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Or discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention from Director Tharp. I will note that the ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously with one abstention from Director Tharp. Mr. Rubio,
Yes, sir.
I'd like a presentation on the other items that we pulled. What order would you like to go in?
We can begin with 2025-L-093.
Very good. Are you able to pull that up on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, this one, yes.
Okay.
So license 2025-L-093 is for LCL Holdings LLC, and it is to construct, operate, and maintain a 6-inch PVC force main paralleling the right bank of the Mesilla Drain. We have the location and its route. Harvest gates will be on Fisher Road and Doñana Drain, which we just approved. And this is our layout of how the force main will sit. Our approximate right of way is 125 feet from right of way to right of way. We have an existing water line, which is approximately 5 feet from the edge of our western right of way limit. We are requesting a variance between the force main and the water line of approximately 10 feet. And that leaves us with approximately 25 feet to our drain. The depth of the existing water line is to be potholed and discovered, and from there, the force main will sit lower than the water line.
Would you repeat that last bit, please?
The existing water line is going to be potholed to verify depth from existing ground. So once that depth is discovered, the force main will sit below that and still about 10 feet to the east from the water line.
What is the approximate existing depth of the water line?
Approximate is about 36 inches, 3 feet.
What is the anticipated depth of the force main?
Should be about 5, is that correct?
Currently, I have it shown as 4 feet deep. But once we pothole the water line, we'll ensure that the force main is minimum 1 foot below the bottom of the water line.
What's the design invert of that drain?
The design invert.
This is a large drain, so this is 20.
Yep. This drain, the way it sits, has years and years of dust blown in. It's not very commonly used anymore.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Rubio? Mr. Glacial?
What is the purpose of all 3 of these pipes?
So the new force main, there's only 2 pipes here shown. One is the existing water. The
Right.
green line there is the proposed. And that's going to feed a subdivision just north of this route, which will sit in this area here.
So where does this force main tie into? Where does it discharge?
It ties into the city line here along the Doñana Drain.
Thank you.
Mr. Roveroski? Aren't the rules that any utilities need to be 5 feet below the invert of our facilities?
Only one that's crossing.
Crossing, correct.
So I will address that some, Mr. Roverosa. I stated that any parallels used of the utilities along our right of way, that I won't approve them if they're not 5 feet below the invert. That has been the expressed desire of this board for several years. I do not believe it's written in the policy.
Mr. President,
Mr. Smith,
you're saying you want a force main buried 25 feet deep.
that is correct. I would love to make a motion to postpone this permit until a policy is reviewed and updated with regard to force mains and other utilities crossing and paralleling any of our facilities. Motion dies for lack of a second. We will continue with discussion on the permit. He's got one.
Yeah. If I may, this is out of the EBID right of use license policy, utility crossings. Item B, utilities adjacent to drains shall be installed a minimum of 3 feet below the natural surface, which is adjacent to the drain, just on the bank.
That would be on the outside 5 feet of the EBID right away. In this case, there's a variance request to bring it a little further in due to an existing water line.
Which is why we're proposing it at 15 feet away from the right of way limit.
It's a large drain, it's a large banks, so.
Director Colquitt.
Someone here said the drain hasn't run in a bit, right? Is that correct? So you, when's the last time it ran? Do you know?
It's before my time.
Oh, wow, okay.
Or.
Yeah, you know.
Before my time, you should know that
before
north
yours.
of Fisher, the drain has been sold. It's filled in.
Yeah.
So the north end of the drain is no longer EBIDs, and that's actually where the sewer line will cross from. I mean, it's not crossing anything, it's filled in, but that drain no longer exists north of Fisher Road.
This is a little different. This is a little different than that forced 4-inch main that was proposed on 3 Saints East lateral at the end, but I mean,
It is a different permit request.
yeah, well, but I mean, we're talking about a canal and a drain, right?
I don't recall what it was going past, or if it was a canal or a drain.
Well, then it was a canal, but
That said, I do want to say that permits are independent applications.
correct. But with that one, the board denied it.
I don't recall, but if that's your recollection, I would disagree with it.
Okay. Is this a good time to discuss the good and the bad,
Of this permit.
Yeah.
So before, I'd like to finish up with questions of staff on the.
Oh, yeah.
Before we bring it back to discussion at the board level. Mr. Sloan.
You may or not know this existing water line, was it installed a long time ago, or is it a recent water line?
Scott, do we have a date on it?
Dave, Marty, did you, this is what we need.
That water line was installed for Tony Mutual. They're the operator of it, and it went in when the Legends West subdivision first went in. So I think that's back in 2003, 4, 5, somewhere in this.
But this board had to approve that permit.
If there's a permit, yes, would that be approved by this board?
The water line isn't.
Thank you, Mr. Gamboa, for that clarification. Any other questions of staff? The applicant is present. I would like to give the applicant an opportunity to present if they desire.
Variance. I think your variance, your variance request.
Yes,
Yes, let's go.
speak on it. So, thank you. So I've submitted a variance for the current policy, I guess, to move the line that we're requesting. I think it's 5 feet. Is that correct?
For policy, yes, sir.
Per policy, yeah, 5 feet closer to the drain. But it still meets the requirements of the distance from the drain, away from it. We will be deeper than the required depth of the line. We purchased from EBID the drain that sits north of this as Mr. Smith mentioned, and it's been filled in and it's gonna be incorporated in the subdivision. So where we're proposing to start the force main is the head of this current drain. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? My question is, why are you requesting a permit from EBID as opposed to placing this outside of EBID's right of way?
There's currently not another feasible alternative to receive, to run this line, I guess you could say. That this makes this possible to do this. The current existing line sits in the outfall channel, which is where we, plan to tie this into.
Thank you. I apologize, my question wasn't clear. It should have been. Why are you not placing this directly outside of EBID's right of way? Why are you requesting it to be placed within our right of way instead of placing it outside of our right of way?
We don't own the property right outside of the right of way. That's a different property owner.
I understand that you don't own this property either, so why this property instead of the adjacent one?
I think for me personally, there's already, Donnie and Mutual, when we got together with them, they obviously knew that they had a water line existing down this line. And that they, mentioned there's a current policy that we could utilize to install this force main next to it for their, maintenance purposes. As well as, trying the other alternative, I guess, getting right outside of it, you'd be crossing multiple property owners. Logistically, I think it'd be a lot more difficult than if we can get this approved, within your all's current policy.
So just to be sure I understand the answer, it is less difficult to ask us than it is to ask them.
No. What's that?
Line we maintain.
The line, I don't think it's less difficult to ask, I think I could go to them and have a discussion with them, however, the maintenance of the line, Donnie and Mutual's maintenance, the city's maintenance. They would really prefer that it be here, because there's already an approved line here that they're maintaining.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. You had some items you wanted to discuss, Director Colquitt?
I mean, just bounce ideas off the board. What are the benefits and drawbacks? Because I don't know, I've never worked.
So I've got a list of concerns. It might be appropriate, that said. Are there any other comments from the board before I go over my concerns? Director Roverosa?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that we need to review the policy for force mains and other utilities across our property. And I would like to have a policy that makes it so that we are making decisions in a not so ad hoc manner and in a more prescribed manner. And I believe that the land use committee is the right place to review these policies. So I think that we need to consider this before just moving on. So
Thank you, Director Roverosa. So, Director, Mr. Smith?
We have a policy based on engineering standards. I represented utilities for a long time. They are handled on an ad hoc basis, but typically when you have an engineered designed project, that engineer has to meet a standard. Our engineers verify that those engineers have met that standard. I guess I'm unclear what policy we need or policy revision. That's the will of the board, but our policy is appropriate in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Director Roverosa?
I think most farmers would not want force mains right next to their land, or next to their canals, or next to their drains. And I think we need to take that into consideration, where we can't just say, oh, well, it's engineering standards, I think most farmers would not want that. Thank you, Mr. Rosa. Director Sloan.
Looking at the photographs and everything, this specific permit. I do feel like it's probably a little bit different situation. Looks like this drain ditch is basically not in use since there is already a blockage where they've already sold the property up above. I feel like this can be is meeting the requirements of our policy. I feel like maybe this is
Overhead.
this may be a different situation, that if there was an active drain flowing water that could receive water. This
Drain could move water one day. If we go back into what times the water table comes back up to where this will move water again, right? This is connected into other parts of the system. This could eventually get back to the river.
It's an active drain. I mean, there might not be water
Yeah.
running, but
Is that right?
Right, just to, just to repeat that, ad hoc questions, I think you're asking if the drain serves any potential function in the future. I mean, the quick answer to that is it is adjacent to ag land. The drains are there to drain a rising water table away from agricultural lands. We should be mindful of the function of the drain for the adjacent land. Is the adjacent land, members of the Alpha Butte Irrigation District? Do they have Alpha Butte Irrigation District water rights?
They do, correct, sir?
Thank you. So I will, just bluntly, I don't like any part of this permit. And here's why. The reason that we have pushed for utilities to be placed below the invert of our facilities is because of wash-ins and wash-outs. There is irrigated farmland adjacent to this drain. It has the potential of washing into this drain. Is this section of the drain disconnected from the system downstream, or is it still connected to the remainder of the drains?
It connects there at the Dunyana drain.
Thank you very much. In a water emergency, should this drain wash in, it can wash in to the invert of the drain. It can't wash in below that, at least as I understand from the smart folks that talk to me about water, but it can wash into the invert. At which point it can wash in through this utility. At which point it exposes this utility rupturing into our drain system. We have been working to do policy amendments to get that properly addressed in policy, to express to those wishing to apply for applications what the requirements would be. Regrettably, it gets to the point of coming to this board where I stated repeatedly, if you have a utility and it is crossing or running parallel to our system and it is within our right of way, it will have to be 5 feet below the invert of that facility. And for drains, that is exceptionally deep.
Mr. President, just
Mr. Smith.
logistically speaking, there are engineers in the room, I'm just manager, but you can't run force mains 25 feet deep.
I suspect that is correct. And in the past, where we've come across things, different alternatives have been found. If this is outside of our right of way, I don't get to say what to do. Inside of our right of way, we do. And protecting our facilities and those that are working to correct a water emergency is of high importance when I consider the approval or disapproval of a permit. The second piece is I need to understand better when we have a system failure in a force main, what is the risk to our facility and how do we mitigate it? We have had recent failures of force mains which had put contaminants into our facilities. I don't understand how to mitigate the risk to our facilities at this time. And so I don't know how to go about approving a permit in such a way that protects our facilities and those that depend on those facilities to deliver water for their livelihoods.
Question.
Mr. Smith,
Marty, how do you isolate this line? Where's the closest valve? Or is that possible?
My name's Marty Pillar. I'm engineer working for District Arc on this project. And the force main, what it would have is at the southeast corner, or excuse me, southwest corner of the subdivision. That is where we're gonna have a wet well at the lift station. And from there, we would pump south to the 36-inch sewer interceptor that the city of Las Cruces has in the outfall channel, and that'd be on the north bank of the outfall channel. What we'd be looking at is we need to tap into that. Before we get to the 36-inch, I have to run that as gravity sewer. So I'll have a couple of manholes there. And then it taps into the top of that 36-inch line. So that restricts me on how deep I can go with the line, is the depth of that 36-inch line. And currently working with the engineering staff here, we have dropped the sewer line below the drain. We have met that. The force main portion of the line that's in the west side of the drain right of way, that is what we were talking about, the depth of that. We can lower that a certain amount. We can't go, the 25 feet below, because then we'd be below the invert of the 36-inch line. But there are no valves or anything in that. Is once we come out of the wet well, we are a closed system until we hit the gravity sewer manholes. And then it's just like a regular gravity sewer system.
thank you. Mr. Gamboa.
And just to add, right, so looking at the drawings here, so there's a total of 5 cleanouts, right?
Well, we have clean
And
outs
it, right,
in there,
and
but
you
not
have
valves.
three manholes through that whole section there, yes. As designed.
The point of my question was, if you have a rupture along that stretch where you're paralleling our drain, where can you shut it off?
The lift station is what would have to be shut off, so that it does not pump anymore. And then the Doniana Mutual would have to be coming up with some other alternative to take care of the sewer that enters that wet well.
Thank you, Mr. Esslinger.
Mr. President, this drain has not functioned as a drain in my 40 years here. And at the terminus of this Mesilla drain, where a portion of the headwaters of the drain have been purchased by the Tharps, that portion in green, there's a gate that stops any water going into that outfall channel. There's a floodgate. And so if you did have a sewer break, it would be contained in that section where the green line is. It would not flow to the south at all. And if it did flow, the gate would have to be open, and that water would go to the river through the outfall channel of City of Las Cruces. The portion of that outfall channel that is what we gave up as the Doniana drain, going north from that terminus of the green line into that outfall channel. So the drain itself, the Mesilla drain heading is closed off before it goes into the outfall channel or south into the park drain. Or excuse me, the Mesilla drain.
So I believe what you said, Mr. Esslinger, is that this section of the drain no longer serves any function for the district.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr.
I
Sloan.
got a question maybe from Gary. I'm just trying to, so in this outfall channel, That's the city sewer line. Did they get a permit, maybe ID to put that sewer line in?
That I'm not aware of. I'm sure they may have, but at the same time, this EBID gave up the drain function as just for another purpose.
So do we still own that?
No. No, it's under the city of Las Cruces responsibility. It became a outfall channel.
So at the end of this drain, if it goes beyond it, is it our responsibility?
The Mesilla drain? Or
Right,
the
or
outfall
the-
channel? No, it's no longer, it's the city's responsibility.
The drain is our responsibility.
But past that,
If you open the gate, you dump it into the Doniana drain, that's the city of Las Cruces.
And if I may add, that gate that dumps into the outfall at the Doniana drain has a special key, so it's not just a regular lock that can be, or a wheel that can be opened by anybody. So it's got a special key.
Yeah.
that the city has to open.
The reason this drain is dry all the time is because of it's within the city limits and the city's wells pump. And to keep that water table down. And so the Mesilla drain, this particular drain, the park drain, within the city limits are dry pretty much all the time. Because of the wells that are surrounding the city limits, they're groundwater wells.
But again, I believe what I hear you saying, Mr. Essinger, is that this drain no longer serves any purpose for the district.
No, sir.
Thank you. I obviously don't support this permit. What is the will of the board?
Don't feel real comfortable, establishing a precedent.
I would rather have a written policy, and a revision and a review of our current policy. So that making decisions on force mains going forward is, going on. So I'm gonna make my motion again, the one that I did earlier. I move to postpone voting on this permit till the land use committee reviews the policy for utilities paralleling and crossing our facilities, in particular, force mains.
Second.
I have a motion from Director Rover Russ, seconded by Director Glacial, to postpone permit number 2025-L-093 and refer to the Land Use Committee, the engineering policy to revise the standards for utilities crossing and paralleling our facilities, especially force mains. Discussion.
This is now, this is now a virgin matter as well for the land use committee, huh?
Well, there's a pending permit that's not being acted on.
So I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah. It's urgent for somebody.
Yeah. I make a motion to send it to.
The motion's already been made.
Oh, yes.
We were open for discussion. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? One. Repeating the president, the ayes have it with one abstention from Director Tharp. The motion passes. This item is postponed and referred to the Land Use Committee for revision of policy. All right, what was the next one I asked to be pulled?
President,
Directors,
just
Mr. Smith.
a suggestion would be that when the land use committee needs to address this, that we invite our engineering staff.
Okay. I just on this matter.
Specifically this matter,
Okay.
because the committee doesn't have the knowledge to dictate policy on
What to do.
engineering. matters.
Sure, okay. I'll get with you on that.
I would advise whenever the land use committee is reviewing engineering policy, that at Mr. Smith's discretion, that engineering staff attend. I absolutely concur with Mr. Smith's recommendation. What was the next one I had, Mr. Rubio?
Buried fiber optic line 2025-L-098.
Thanks very much. And essentially, it's the exact same thing here. I just want to ensure that the state of requirement that this line be buried 5 feet below the design invert of our lateral across our right of way.
What was
Is
the number
indeed-
now, Mr. President?
094.
Your name. I'm sorry, Director Clay, what was the question?
What was the permit number on that, the license number?
The last one we did?
The one we're doing right now.
098.
98, thank you.
Is indeed 5 feet below the invert across the width of our right of way.
This one here, let me see. So this Comcast fiber line was to go above the existing culvert. It's a
Okay.
36-inch.
So I thought it might be, can we discuss that some, please? So I'm assuming this is a culverted crossing because there's a paved roadway.
Correct.
Do we have any design drawings? I don't think we do, no.
It's the drawing right now.
Would you zoom in on that drawing, please? I want to be sure I understand what's happening with the crossing.
So they'll be burying a fiber optic line along Harlacker Road. And this is Walter's lateral, which they'll be going over the culvert.
And so how far does the culvert extend beyond where they're
The crossing,
utility crossing?
the culvert is only 26 feet, the width of the road.
So are they digging at the roadway?
They will be boring.
No,
Is that correct?
so they're gonna be on, I believe they're on the north side of the roadway. There's dirt on each side and they'll be outside the roadway, right above the pipe. And from the pipe, from the top of our pipe, they're gonna place this line 12 inches above that. And then from the top of their line to existing ground is another 12 inches. So it'll be a total of 2 feet. And that line will be in between, and that's just per our policy of our drawing, EBID drawings. Drawing D is actually in that package as well.
Is there a head wall on that culvert
On the north side.
Yeah,
on the north side? So there's somewhere between the head wall and the roadway?
yes,
So I believe there, again, we have some engineering requirements. I believe I've seen in policy that talks about how you go over a culverted crossing.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Drawing D.
Yes,
in here?
yes.
And this is in compliance with that.
Yes, sir.
Which I know that-
So there's obviously no risk with the fiber optic breaking and leaking into our facility.
It's a lot for the whole thing. All the way down.
Okay.
Yes, and the drawing D that does provide the diagrams of where the piping, or I'm sorry, where the lines need to be placed. That, there it is right here. That's placed with every package.
Thank you, yeah. That's the one I'm familiar with seeing. Again, the reason for the depth is to protect utilities and our maintenance teams and anyone addressing a water emergency, and a wash in or a washout. The laterals, obviously, a washout is the concern. I don't understand the concerns once you're downstream of the head wall. What are the concerns there in running this over the culvert instead of under it?
There was just another sign. There's a culvert there, so that's how.
I'm wondering about emergency operations. What are the concerns that we have with if this is running over the culvert downstream of the head wall versus running under it? Is there something I should be considering there in approving a permit that chooses to run over it instead of under it?
An emergency situation would be just replacing the culvert and it'd be working around that line, right, that goes above.
I'm like talking when the water's running, not be like,
Oh, wow.
we've got a problem, we gotta replace the culvert.
Um,
But again, I just don't quite understand how a washout would work downstream of the head wall. Mr. Esslinger, you had a comment?
No, the only thing I could think of is a big K culvert. And certainly, I believe that might be a county road and they would be responsible for that.
Correct.
Repair. of the culvert, which would be their concern as to making sure that they had the right to dig.
Correct. To address your question about the head wall, you might get some erosion behind the head wall, which is away from here. It's about 15-20 feet upstream of where this crossing would be.
The head wall is 15 feet upstream of.
No, you would have your wing walls.
Okay.
So you have your head wall
Uh-huh.
and then you have wing walls extending out. That's
Okay.
where you would have some
Okay, thank
some
you.
erosion.
All right, that addresses my questions. Other questions to staff on this permit? Hearing none, was the will of the board.
Motion approved.
I have a motion to approve. I can't tell which permit this is. What's the permit number?
Yeah, 2025-L-098.
I have a motion to approve permit 2025-L-098. Seconded by Director Rosa. I have the motion was made by Director Glacial. Any discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. Brings us to City of Las Cruces.
Yeah.
And there are extensive drawings on this.
Yeah, I asked, provide the whole package.
It's great. You know. It helps to address, like, I have a question on this. Oh, there's a drawing. Okay, I figured it out.
License number 2025-L-114 to construct and operate and maintain a pipe portion and an existing culvert crossing in the Las Cruces lateral from approximate stations X to X is shown as exhibits A and B. The city here wants to pipe a portion of the Las Cruces lateral for a trail that they propose. The pipe portion runs from University to where it meets I-10. Convention Center is here. The Courtyard Marriott is here. That there's the pipe portion.
Director Rosa, it looks like, okay, so first of all, do they only want to pipe this to build a trail, or do they want to pipe it independently of whether they can build a trail there or not?
The main reason for piping this is for the trail.
Okay, now, is that land EBID farm rate tract land? Is it their EBID constituents?
I
believe
so,
Yes, it's New Mexico State University.
Correct.
Okay. We tell them they can't build a trail next to farm tract land. Are they still gonna wanna pipe that?
Likely not.
Would we still permit it for them to pipe it? That is the question for.
We don't know that we're not gonna allow them though to do that.
It's also true.
So that's the license.
So to get to the discrete. The discrete question before us in this permit, as I understand it. Would we grant them a permit? To pipe this portion of the lateral. Per their design considerations. They're asking for no other use in this permit other than the pipe. I believe I understand that correctly.
Correct. This permit here is for the piping of the lateral. The trail would come as part of the MOU.
And would require a separate permit also. Correct.
And I would be.
Go ahead. Director Sloan.
I move to accept the permit. Second.
I have a motion by Director Sloan to approve the permit, seconded by Director Tharp. Mr. Franzoy.
I was just gonna state that I don't believe they receive any surface water here. They do have water rights, but they do not receive surface water. Is that correct, Gary?
No, they. This particular area, if you can see. You're going. In the middle, there's a street called College Street. And right in there, there is a heritage farm owned by New Mexico State. They can receive surface water there if they need so, but they have put in a well so they normally irrigate that through a well. The portion below, College Street where you can see the alfalfa field and that vacant land, they do have a turnout to receive surface water there as well. That would all be included in the pipeline design to at least allow them, if they want to receive surface water, but primarily these two tracks, the one to the Heritage Farm and the one to the south of College Street, are usually irrigated by wells, not by surface water. But they have in the past been allowed to order water there. The New Mexico State is quite interested in also having this section piped as well, and they have been working with the city, as far as I know, and believe it's in the best interest of New Mexico State to have this portion piped due to the fact there's a lot of students that walk on that, and it's an open ditch. And there's a big safety concern for the convention center and the people in the Courtyard Marriott and the students of New Mexico State.
Thank you, Mr. Esslinger. I appreciate that, all of those details, yes.
And all liability will be transferred as well. That is an important distinction that you will assume no liability or maintenance.
Under the trail MOU.
Okay, under the trail under you, not under the permit.
Correct.
Correct. So again, keeping our distinct question today is, are we permitting them to pipe this?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lutz?
just for those that have been in discussion with the city of Los Cruces, do they understand that they will have to come to get a separate permit when they want to do the trail?
Yes.
Okay. As long as they understand.
Yes.
Under the land use fee on this, it simply said MOU. That said, is there a land use fee to pipe part of our facility? That, it's an interesting question. I don't even know what that land use fee would be.
It's, it would just be used as parallel.
Yeah, I think the answer is thank you for piping it. Yeah, I'm not aware of a land use fee for piping our system.
It's the parallel. We would use that as in, like, if we're paralleling the line along a canal, that's all we charge would be though, as a parallel one.
And it's really hard to get things and putting in there.
So, Mr. Gambo's testimony there suggests that there is a land use fee. And so I want to clarify that. Well, Mr. Rosa, I remember when Las Cruces was trying to pipe, I think, a portion of a canal that goes right along University there in Lucia. We actually did charge them a land use fee. We actually discussed it extensively. And they were asking to have it waived and we made them pay for it. I don't recall that. So I do.
I think that was the one on Amador.
On Amador.
Behind the army.
I actually recall it being an area where they were fencing. It was the fencing of an existing lateral and they were asking for a waiver of the land use fee. I may be misremembering this, but that's my recollection, and they were asking us to waive it. We said, anybody else that would put a fence on our property, we would require a land use fee. We're gonna require it of you as well. I don't recall requiring a land use fee when they piped this section of the lateral between Amador and Valley. Can someone help? Armijo, thank you.
Just the application fee, the land use fee was not charged to my recollection.
That's how I recall it as well.
That's correct.
Mr. Gamboa, you were suggesting that there is a land use fee for piping our canals, and it would be the same as a parallel.
Anytime that there's a use of our right of way, or crossing parallel, there's gonna be a land use fee. And then that's why we have the box on the application that can check that for agriculture use. If not for MOU, if it's tied to that, then that can be discussed.
I'm trying to understand the difference between a use of our right of way and the conversion of our facility from open channel to pipe. Is it like, they aren't actually putting a use in here. The entire use of this pipe will be for the Butte Irrigation District.
And to deliver surface water to their ag lands there. So it'd be in slight turnouts.
Is it your opinion, Mr. Gamboa, that our policy requires a land use fee when you convert it from, like, if I were to convert a section of my lateral for being an open channel, being piped, would I be required to pay an ongoing land use fee to do that?
You know what, if it's the right of way is being used, in this case, it's due to a trail. That's why we're,
Is there a trail on this permit?
no,
Okay, I can't consider that.
so, hey, I mean, we're just talk about being piped.
Don't believe there's a land use fee for improving our system for us.
Right. That's a good point.
I concur with Mr. Smith's opinion on that, Mr. Gamboa.
No, you made, that's a valid point, yeah, correct.
Okay,
I concur with their new manager that if it's a benefit to the district to pipe the lateral, there's no charge for that.
Thank you.
I believe you deferred that opinion, Mr. Gamboa.
Those are the words that I left out, exactly what,
Thank
Mr. Smith has stressed, so.
Appreciate the clarification. All right, other. So given that, there is no land use fee for this,
No, sir.
administrative application fee, and that's all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opinion of the president, the ayes have it, the motion passed unanimously. I believe that completes permitting. Did I miss anything, Mr. Gamble?
No, sir.
I'm sorry. Rubio, did I miss anything?
No, sir.
Thank you. HR and safety.
You have the HR update, your board packet. We actually have 81 rather than 80 current employees. We did hire a new customer service representative, help Marty out up front. They will be in on the 14th, next Monday. We recognize our two employees earlier today, and so we have an HR. No retirements, thankfully.
One more month. Thank you, but then I do want to express. Yeah, and I appreciate when folks want to retire. You know, you've run your race. That said, I also really appreciate folks that continue to stick around and give themselves to our district. So thank you on both sides.
One more point. July 17th, this is mandatory professionalism and harassment training.
Mr. Colquitt, Mr. Tharp. We've got to schedule someone to come out and train independently. If you don't want to, please be there. It's a big deal. All right, that brings us to the suspension of transfer agreement. One moment while I get to the proper page.
Good morning.
That one needs more power. I was thinking about getting to the red page.
Bring this.
It struggles with the big documents. Grab Colquitt. Always my script on it. Rebuild Mr. Colquitt. What do you want? Your time. No. Yeah. Thank you. That's fine. Right. Thank you. Thank you. I call to order The board of directors sitting as a board to hear suspension and transfer application. Boards convene to act upon applications by landowners in the district, transfer water rights pertinent to lands within the district which are not suitable for irrigation or capable of being properly irrigated to other lands within the district. These applications are filed under section 73-13-4 of the New Mexico statutes. This board will decide if, within their judgment, the other lands within the district may be profitably and advantageously irrigated. The applicants are identified as listed on Exhibit A. The applicants were required to publish notice in any paper, in any newspaper published within Doñana County of EBID taking action to consider a resolution allowing the transfer. The publication should have listed the time and place of this meeting, listed the action to be taken by this board, listed the description of the move to and move from lands, and listed the reason for the requested transfer. Does staff have a copy of the notice of publication?
Yes, sir, we do.
Were all of the required points in the publication?
Yes, sir.
Was the last publication date made prior to this hearing?
Yes, sir, it was.
We will proceed with the presentation by staff. After that, the board members can ask questions of staff.
We have two this morning. The first one is 2025 WTS 007. JD 780 Valley LLC is transferring 7.24 water righted acres to JD4 Farms LLC. If approved, JD 780 Valley LLC will no longer have water rights, and JD4 Farms LLC will have a new total of 27.11. Second one is 2025 WTS 008. Juan and Maria Olvera is transferring a combined total of 3.43 water righted acres to Adam Produce Inc. If approved, Mr. and Mrs. Olvera will no longer have water rights, and Adams Produce Inc. will have a new total of 83.46. Staff recommends approval on both.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Yeah,
Director Clayshall.
my question on the first one, JD 780 Valley LLC, what is currently on that property?
On the front,
Yeah.
I believe that is Vescovo.
Pardon?
I believe that's.
Let's go with Toyota.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions of staff? At this point, the board will take evidence and testimony from the applicants or their representatives, or any persons who are here to protest the applications. We will proceed with any presentation by the applicants. After that, the board members and EBID staff can ask questions of the applicants. Would the applicants or their representatives introduce themselves? Hearing none, if there's an applicant that I have missed, when you get unmuted, please speak up. Are there any protestants who wish to speak? If so, please identify yourselves for the record. Hearing none. Are there any other comments? Hearing none, the chair will now entertain a motion to have a resolution to approve or disapprove the applications.
I move to approve resolution 2025-S&T 06.
Second.
I have a motion from Director Rosa, seconded by Director Clayshall to approve resolution 2025-S&T 06. Discussion. Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Right.
Any opposed? In the opinion of the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. I will ask that the resolution be formalized as called for by section 73-13-5 of the New Mexico statutes, and that the secretary of the board immediately certify and file with the state engineer a true copy of the resolution and action of the board. If there are any protestants who disagrees with this action of the board, you may appeal this decision directly to the district court as provided under section 73-13-4 of the New Mexico statutes. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the board sitting to hear the applications. Move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion from Director Rosa, seconded by Director Glacial to adjourn the board sitting to hear applications. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any of the president, the ayes have it, motion passes unanimously. That concludes our agenda for open session. Are there any other items that be mentioned for open session? Hearing none. I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss the agenda closed session items.
I make a motion to go into closed session to discuss closed session items.
I have a motion by Director Colquitt, seconded by Director Ludwig to go into closed session to discuss the agenda closed session items. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being as present, the ayes have it, motion passed unanimously, we're in closed session. You pause the recording, Madam Secretary? Here. Not stop. Cancel. Having nothing else to cover in closed session, I'll accept the motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion from Director Garai, seconded by Director Glacial to come out of closed session. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any of the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes. We are back in open session. I'll note for the record that nothing was discussed in closed session other than the items mentioned in the motion, which were the agenda closed session items. Anything else for, any other announcements for open session? Hearing none, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion from Director Garai, seconded by Director Glacial to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.